In a political era where there's a lot to be against, it's more important than ever that we know what we're for. I see that even though there's this appearance of division in our country, there's actually so much that we agree with. And a lot of these things are not happening right now. We don't have the leadership around them. I have a 6-point plan. It includes a pro-democracy initiative, revision in our foreign policy approach, tax reform, healthcare reform, education reform, and a big infrastructure bill. So a little bit more about all of these 6 points. And they all kind of have to happen together, but the first one probably has to happen first, because nothing else will change if we don't do this. We need a pro-democracy initiative. This involves campaign finance reform and voter reform. If you look at the approval ratings of our top leaders in politics, they're really low, below 50%, and I think the Senate's rating is like below 20%. How does this happen? Well, it's because we don't really have a great chance to vote for who we really feel represents us. So this is going to help both Republicans and Democrats across the country get who they want. We need to get the money out of politics. We need an amendment to the Constitution, it seems, in order to do this. But this amendment would put limits on the amount of money that can be put into campaigns. Because right now, we have legalized bribery. The more money you have, the more potential you have to get yourself a seat at the table. And people try to argue against this all the time. Come on, man. You know that when you give money to a campaign, you're going to have a seat at the table, whereas regular schmucks like me, I don't have money to I'm not in the donor class, so I don't have a seat at the table nearly to the same degree as the big corporations do. So we're going to eliminate the super PACs, and we're going to have more tight regulation on how money can be spent on campaigns. We could also consider something like the democracy dollars, where each individual has there's public financing to give each individual a certain amount to contribute to campaigns for the year. The other aspect of this is voter reform, and these are some really simple things that need to happen if we really have democracy. First, everybody needs to be automatically enrolled to vote in their states. It's ridiculous that we don't already have this. We want as many people to vote as possible. And me, coming as a more progressive person, I want to make sure that all people in red rural America are able to vote and easily. We also, to make the ease of voting even more so, we should have voting holidays. Every day of the year, every other year when there's a day to vote, everybody should be off of work, or it should be a holiday. Make it easy for everybody to actually maybe even have some interaction with the representative on that day, talk amongst each other, and then make an informed decision when voting. I'm a big fan of ranked choice or approval voting. If you look at how we vote now, okay, so you have, say, 5 Republicans that you can choose from. You have to choose just one of them. Well, what if you have 2 that are really close to each other? Or maybe all 4 or 5 of them, they're really close. Well, how can you communicate that in the current way that we have to vote? So ranked choice or approval voting would be far superior, far more democratic. And lastly, the electoral college has got to go. I mean, you're giving some people more than one vote, and you're giving other people less than a vote. Completely ridiculous and undemocratic. It's got to go. We're going to go to the popular vote. Okay, number 2, our foreign policy approach. And this is actually, these 2 things got to happen right away. So our status quo of regime change wars and our violence that we bring across the world, and our inflammatory actions where we're just throwing weapons into troubled areas, is super counterproductive. We say that we're doing it to protect American interests. That's totally bogus, because in a couple of years, when you sell weapons into an area, as is happening in Turkey right now, where the weapons being used to assault the Kurds, there are weapons. So our weapons are killing people, and then our weapons are trying to protect those people. It's complete madness. So the first aspect of this is just a diplomacy-first approach, which is not what we have right now. We need to get our best diplomats on the job, and it needs to be just an American ethic that's reinforced, that we are the nation that solves problems. So it's an emphasis on collaboration and de-escalation. That's a big change. The second part of this is disarmament. Anytime we get in an agreement with another country, part of that deal has to be around de-escalating, demilitarizing, denuclearizing. And then the other part is that we need to phase out and end any cross-border sales of weapons. Now, this is extremely controversial, probably, in contrast to what we currently do. But think about it. It's madness that we are arming up the world, and we think we're making people safer. That's ridiculous. So no sales across the border of weapons. It's got to end. So thirdly, in taxation. Right now what we have is a terribly regressive tax system. I hear the argument, which is true, that, oh, well, if you look at how we tax income, that's a progressive tax. Yes, but people's income doesn't really affect their economic potential to be an economic actor, or their potential to make investments. For that, it's all about wealth. So, and if you look at the percentage of people's wealth that is taxed each year, it's terribly regressive. And actually, the people who get the biggest burden are people who are in the 99% to about 85% or maybe 75% of percentage of wealth holders. But people above 99% and the higher 99.9, 99.999, those people pay a tiny fraction of their wealth in taxes. So what I'm saying is not class warfare. The class warfare is already being wrought onto us. So this is just standing up for ourselves and demanding justice. So this is the tax code that I would phase in. For all monies owned by an individual or held by an individual, all of their wealth holdings. So we're phasing out, by the way, the income tax, and we're phasing out the business tax. You don't need to do that. You just need to do one tax on people's wealth. And here's a basic model for how to do this. For all holdings above $10 billion, there's a 30% tax. For all holdings above $1 billion, 25%. For all holdings above 100 million, 20%. For all holdings above 10 million, 15%. For all holdings above 100K, 5%, and everything below 100K of holdings, no tax. If you institute this tax, what happens is you increase the federal budget, you double it basically, nearly double it. You can generate today $6 trillion on this system, while at the same time you do not harm anybody. Yeah, those people at the very top are going to pay way more in taxes than they pay now, but they still have billions of dollars left over at the end of the day. And when you tax people this way, and the people who are, again, the 95% to 70% wealth holders, they're going to actually get a huge tax break. And what are they going to do with that tax break? They're probably going to spend that money, and a lot of that money is going to go back into the big corporations. You know, they're going to buy TVs, they're going to buy iPhones. So the money is going to go right back into those wealthy people. I don't even know why I'm trying to rationalize this on behalf of the wealthy people, because the bottom line is right now they're paying such a small percentage of their wealth in tax. We're basically letting them do whatever they want with it. And it's completely foolish, and we wonder why we have a $21 trillion deficit. It's because we're just letting all this money go untaxed. So that's huge. So then what else can we do with this $6 trillion besides pay off the debt? Well, we can fund the last three efforts. So we're going to fund a healthcare single-payer system that will give robust preventative and catastrophic healthcare for all Americans. So there's no exemptions to this. There's no exemptions to this tax, by the way. And this is what this tax is going to pay. So everybody's buying in. There's no exemption here. And if you want to get extra coverage, I don't think you necessarily need to eliminate all private health insurance, but it just would be pretty much useless unless you wanted to get one of those surgeries, to make yourself look like a cat. So you get all this plastic surgery so you look like a cat or something, or you make your nose smaller and your lips fatter. If you want to get private insurance to do that, then go ahead. But then you don't even need insurance. If you're somebody who can afford that, then you're going to pay out of pocket anyways. So that's the deal. And consider this. Not only are we going to now provide coverage for that 15% of Americans, millions of Americans who do not have coverage right now, they end up costing the system far, far more. And it doesn't really matter to an individual whether they're paying it out of pocket or whether they're paying it in taxes. With that said, this system is estimated, this method is estimated to cost $2.5 billion per year. And all of that would be coming from taxes. But this is opposed to what we have now with the Obamacare, where we're paying $3.5 billion per year and 15% of people don't have coverage. You compare that with the most recent Republican plan, where we would be systemically paying $5 trillion per year, and something like 25% of people would not have coverage. So you tell me which one of those makes sense, and I'll tell you how we get it done. Okay? So the fifth thing, education. And this is a big one, because look at what we're doing here. We're going to have a single payer for lifelong education for all Americans. So this includes pre-K, primary, secondary, college, and it also contributes to internships and jobs retraining programs. So every American will have the opportunity to access any of these services, and it's paid for, it's collected with the federal tax, and it's given to individuals. Well, it's actually paid for the services that those individuals would access. So I know that right now there's a lot of concern, you can't take, right now we want to have local control of the schools. Well, this would empower the schools even more so than they would today. I mean, if you're in a really wealthy district right now and you got a ton of money coming in from the taxes, you wouldn't get as much tax money coming in, but you're wealthy anyway, so you're more than welcome to donate to the school and make it even better. But we're going to support really strong services for every single American, and no longer will anybody be left behind. Lastly, the infrastructure bill. This is a triple bottom line focused infrastructure bill. So I'm taking the idea of the Green New Deal and I'm expanding it also to include some social considerations as well. So what this will include is green energy investments into solar, wind, and hydroelectric, and also exploration into this. I hear something about this next level of nuclear that's it's not using plutonium, it's using something else that's supposed to be way cleaner, way less waste. I don't think they have any power plants up using this yet, but I want to invest in exploring this idea. Right now, we invest tons of money in gas, oil, and shale exploration. Well, we're going to shift those monies over to look at alternatives to fossil fuels because they're problematic, and we clearly understand this. So we have to use this socialized oil system that we have now and convert it into socialized green energy investment. We're also going to help individuals and small businesses retrofit their buildings so that they're greener and more efficient. We're gonna implement a broad strategy to retrofit our transportation systems, support local and regional connection especially. We're going to support affordable housing because right now 20% of people, only 20% of people are able to afford housing, the housing that's been built in the last 40 years in this country. So the markets are not working to help people get access to affordable housing. And all of this is kind of tied to the last bit of this. And this whole plan, all 6 points are related to this. It's about regional planning. So this is a regional planning initiative. And particularly in this, the infrastructure bill will also include an initiative that will help regional planning boards form around this broader infrastructure plan. And we're going to put the emphasis on what do the regions need to support themselves. Okay? So with this 6-point plan, be a game changer, man. But there's going to be a lot of resistance to it. But I'm all in for the fight. And I don't plan on, Democrats and Republicans are not going to get it done. So it's going to come down to third-party representation in order to get this done. And even the Green Party right now, they're totally off base. They have a lot of room to grow in really strategizing holistically in order to get things done.